Hey, everybody, welcome to Tellman and Fellman. My name is Harris Fellman, and that guy over there.
Tellman Knutson. Welcome to Tellman and Fellman, and we have special guest Craig Perrine.
Craig is back for part 2 because we want to dive deeper, and we just had we had a good time yesterday just talking about the old days, and we want to dive into some other stuff with him. I am... What? Why is that funny?
I think it's funny.
Okay. It has nothing to do with the fact that we didn't have another guest today. I mean, and Craig was willing to go back to back with us. I'm in. I think I'm more tired than you today, Craig. I'm in Scotland. I got about 4 hours of sleep last night. I flew in. I decided to change my shirt to match my hotel room. You can see I match my hotel room perfectly now. I'm performing for a company here at the hotel in about, I guess, 4 hours. I should go down there. So anyway, that's what I'm doing in Scotland. I flew up here from sunny, some cloudy England up to windy Scotland, Glasgow. I'm in Glasgow, and that's it. That's all anybody could care about me. If you have any questions about Scotland, I have no idea, so don't ask them. Ask about digital marketing.
I have questions that I'm going to ask. So, Scotland. I'm a little Scottish, but I've never been to Scotland, and I own 3 utility kilts, and I wear them regularly. One question I have is, do they actually regularly wear kilts in Scotland, at least in Glasgow where you are? And 2 is, do they only wear traditional kilts? Do they wear utility kilts in Scotland, or is that like blasphemy? Like, is that American bullshit in there? Out there. What's the deal?
Well, I mean, I've been to Edinburgh quite a bit. I haven't been to Scotland, but for about a couple of hours. I mean, Glasgow for a couple of hours. I would say no. I don't think anybody is wearing kilts around town at all. And I think it's basically traditional. They wear it. I see people wearing kilts, but they're all together for
right, like a ceremony,
reproduction, or a revolution reenact. No, I don't know. They didn't have a revolution. I don't think they had a revolution. Did they have a revolution? I don't even know that. But so no, I've not seen anybody in a kilt. No, but they seem comfy. They seem comfy. They seem like you let the boys fly. And
the kilts are great. They're wonderful.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, very freeing.
That's funny. I was just thinking, if they're not wearing kilts, they're just walking around bottomless. Then I guess just we didn't cover that.
Well, I was going to show you guys. I'm not wearing a kilt, but I guess
we're going to get right into it. All right, Craig. Welcome back for part 2. Welcome back. So.
Well, in case anybody's just watching, give Tellman or Craig just give a real brief intro. Craig's been doing marketing since 1902, I think it was.
That's right, 1902. And this was the most important, pivotal product that he was ever involved in. He was an interview on this product right here, the Nitro Marketing Mindset. Pivotal, I tell you. Pivotal.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Nitro Marketing Mindset. I can't even say it, Tellman.
I know.
Why do you care so much about it?
This is a course that I created with Nitro Marketing, Kevin Wilkie and Matt Gill, and it is a NLP hypnosis modeling program that where I did interviews on getting started, focusing, and following through as an entrepreneur with Kevin and Matt. And then I found out how they actually think about things and run projects in their mind. And then I created hypnosis sessions to literally program the customers to think like them. And then I did these awesome bonus interviews with Eric Owens, Craig Perrine, and Rick Thompson. And this is how I made my first money on the internet. I got a royalty check from these guys, and it was like $12,693. And I was like, holy monkeys. Like,
it wasn't like the first thing. It's like the first thing you made money on the internet with. Is that right? Or
I think so. At least it was the first thing that I made anything significant with. If there was something
where you kind of discovered that collaboration, but like multiple people promoting something was powerful.
Yeah, and it was their company, and I was the content creator, and I was also the project manager kind of in tandem with Joe Lavery, as I recall. And
I remember Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joe, I should interview. Like, we should totally interview for Tellman Fellman.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from him in a while. He's been kind of hiding under a rock, I think.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I don't know that he was old enough to drink back then, but now I'm just kidding. But he was a young gun back then, and
yeah,
that's amazing. I remember, the Nitro Boys. I mean, I'll do credit. I learned a ton from the time that I was with them, and I had different. I ran a couple websites with them. I published my course through them, so I had a number of different things that we were working on together, and yeah, the royalty checks were very nice, and I was writing, I think, near daily emails for a while there, with a list that knew me by name. That was my first sort of fairly big list, and grew substantially while I was, with them. So that was that was it. It was amazing.
When I applied for the project manager position, for the I'm sure they had a more sexy name for it, but it was the project manager position for Jack Zufeldt's DNA of Success.
I remember, yeah.
And I won that position out of like 150 applicants or whatever. And then I turned it down after I won it because I was like, I won't be able to focus on somebody else's stuff. I'm too wrapped up in my own stuff. Like I had enough awareness to realize that I just didn't have like, if I was like already enamored with the DNA of Success and was like a true believer, it would have been different. But I wasn't. Like, I needed some convincing. Jack Zufeldt's great, by the way, and his stuff works great.
Oh, yeah.
I just wasn't like a super fan. And so I turned it down, and then I pitched them on what became the Nitro Marketing Mindset. And but what that did is then I met Joshua Shafran. And I managed to get a free copy of NPod. And I went through NPod, Joshua Shafran created, and that was like the first home study course that taught an internet marketing business model. Okay.
Yeah. Joshua was way ahead of his time. I'm seeing people now that don't have quite the vision. I'm like, so sometimes it's funny. I hate that old man, shouting at the sky moment where someone's like, I just came up with him. Like, no, you didn't. But I'm like, actually, that was something we were very proud to participate in back in, 2004. But anyway,
NPod
stood for, and what was the model?
So what happened was Nitro then had republished and were selling NPod. And
That's
NPod
right.
stood for Net Profits on Demand. I have a copy of it in the other room. Net Profits on Demand. And what it did is it taught the idea of basically, and this is my translation, this isn't how Joshua would put it necessarily, but we should totally interview him soon. It's the idea of creating an internet vending machine. Really, where you drive traffic, people opt into your list, they get an autoresponder sequence. The autoresponder sequence sells them the thing that you're selling them. After they opt into the list, they see a sales letter and they buy the thing that you're selling them. And then as your list builds, you then send a broadcast out to the list every now and again, and profits on demand. That's like, it's money out of nowhere. And I mean, that's the model. Like, that is the model. And interestingly enough, that model it's a little more sophisticated now with email deliverability. What I'm seeing is that model is actually more relevant and more important now due to the changes in email deliverability. I haven't ever realized that until this moment. Is that actually building NPods are the new filtration system that we kind of need to build in order to, and prune people after 60 days if they don't open, and then again prune them after 60 days if they don't open, so you keep your list super clean. But like actually building the whole thing on autoresponder sequences and broadcasting becomes an occasional windfall. It's actually a much more sustainable way of thinking. I've been thinking about stuff for like 15 years. I'm realizing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've done. I've done a mix of both. I mean, like with my email with the traffic company. I mean, I have a year's worth of autoresponders in there. But then if you don't prune them, if you don't go back and you know, and clean them up, then they stop being effective as well. So it's not a total set and forget it, you know. But it's interesting that you've always done only email broadcasts. I mean, almost, not only. Obviously, somebody comes on, you've got an autoresponder for a new product, but your main way of, but I've always found, at least up until recently, that email broadcasts get a much better response rate than autoresponders do. But that might be me and my own inability to write good autoresponders. I don't know.
I really think that is because I mean, the response happens over time, and obviously, as a autoresponder sequence, a drip sequence continues, there's going to be drop off over time. You know, just the nature of the beast. But
what do you think, Craig? Because Sean Mitchell, by the way, he posted, I wish I could find that old Perrine email marketing CD I bought 1 million years ago. So that means somebody thinks you know something about this topic.
Yes.
So what do you think you thought back then? And do you have any current thoughts on, you know, like Tellman's feeling, I think, is that, and we've talked to a couple of people on this show already that think that there's some benefit in having, you know, autoresponder sequence going for everything, and then email broadcasts are like the icing on the cake, like he was just saying, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. One, I do want to circle back and give props to Joshua, because back then he was teaching the a more relationship style, more personal style of email marketing.
Personal.
And he routinely would he talked about how a 5,000 person list done correctly would outperform a 50 or 100,000.
And how he did that against Sean Casey back in the day, using the very same, yeah.
And I had a very similar experience back then. Right after Nitro Marketing, maybe 6 months later, I was promoting butterfly marketing with Mike Fellman, and I only had I only had 1,800 people on my list at that point, from just offering, you know, free bonuses for book launches and speaking at events and things like that. So I had a very small list, and I was mostly doing consulting, but I came in 11th on the leaderboard. I was one sale away from being in the top 10 with 1,800 people on my list. And I was pretty amazed that I got anybody, you know, out of that.
Craig, let me ask you, how old was that list?
6 months. Like,
So there are a couple factors here. So here's the interesting thing, right? If it's a fresh list, like if you, this is a little bit like, I don't know, I don't like the energetic feeling of this, but like, if you think of your customers as like a plant in the garden, right? And they may or may not come back next season, but like you have like a window where that plant is like giving you fruit, right? And where it's harvest time, and you're either going to harvest it and do something with it, or it's going to fall on the ground, it's going to go away. And like, that's when they're in a buying mode, right?
Yes,
and
that's
so,
true. Yeah.
If your list is fresh and new and young, and you've developed a relationship with it, then like you have a whole bunch of hyper responsives on there. Okay.
Yes,
as it gets older, though, the relationship can continue. But here's the kicker: the hyper responsiveness doesn't usually continue. Okay?
Well, so a couple things there. One, to get back to Harris's question. And also, there's a life cycle, whether it's your list or in general, of about, in a lot of niches, about 6 months where someone is in that mode of like, hey, I'm interested in this, I'm excited about it. And so they will naturally life cycle out, kind of irregardless of what you're doing on your list, potentially, right? But to Harris's question, what's really interesting about this is that the autoresponder is a way to kind of stay in front of them. And from a deliverability point of view, it doesn't have the issue of, let's say you had a larger list, right? This doesn't really matter if you have 1,800 people, but if you have 50 or 100,000 plus people and you're broadcasting, you have issues of the age of the list, right? Who's getting the email first? I mean, there's some more intelligent ways to do that so that you do mail the more recent people first on a broadcast. That's important. You know, that's a writer downer if you're doing email marketing, because most autoresponder or most mail systems historically will just mail on a first in, first out basis. So your oldest subscribers will get mailed first. What you really want to do is set it so you mail your most engaged people first. I learned that years ago, and it was basically, it's a tactic to show Google and Yahoo and all that basically your most engaged people are opening, and so therefore they think it's a great list. But if you're mailing people from 2005 and they don't open or whatever, then
it's really smart. Yeah.
Then there's a possibility of it looking like your email is not very desired, and that may throttle the send.
And it used to be that you could more easily send out to the most engaged people, and then a little bit later send out to the medium engaged, and then even send out to the less engaged. But I think it's changing. I think it's changing, and I think what it's changing to is you actually only send out to the engaged people.
Yes,
like, that's where it's going. Point. It's a big pain in the ass. Like it is, so, it's and it seems so counterintuitive, but it's like basically we've got to keep everything squeaky clean so we can get our emails delivered.
Well, it's kind of like that whole, if a tree falls in the woods, does anybody hear it thing, right? If someone's not engaged, whether you mail them as part of your broadcast or not, doesn't really matter. They're not engaged. So you might as well, it's like, I'm trying to think of a metaphor here, of calling someone for a date, but if they're not answering the phone, like whether you call or not doesn't really matter.
Leave it alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Just let it go.
It's interesting to me to see, like, I've always, I don't know, early on I've said the best part of your list is the freshest part of your list. And and I guess because I've been doing, been selling email marketing, email traffic for over, 10 years, I see it a little differently. I feel like Tellman's almost like, oh, now we have to start only mailing the engaged people. I know you're not quite saying that, but I've seen it more as a
black and white a little. I'm just trying to make
I've seen it more as a transition from we can mail the people that have engaged in the last 6 months, 4 months, 3 months, 2 months. Now it's like the last 30 days. I don't totally agree that it's black and white. That I do think you can't just totally throw away your old list. There's still some value there, but they shouldn't be on the same. They shouldn't be in the same platform, or at least the same account. And definitely what Craig says is so smart, and I see it. I see it all the time, and I do it. I actually do. I have kind of a very engaged, and I have a 3 times as big. It's not the whole history, but like these people. So I'll mail this one a couple times, the more engaged, the 30-day list, and then I basically told Gmail that this is an engaged list. It's coming from an engaged person, and then the next one goes out and it does fine. But ultimately, like, the numbers aren't that, you can't, like, if you really start doing this, you start looking at the numbers. Like, I'll make it easy. Let's say I have a list of 5,000 very engaged, and I have a list of 10,000, and the 5 are in there, and I'll get a 50-60% open rate on the 5,000. And I'll get a 25-30% open rate on the 10,000. I'm like, are those the same people anyway? Like, it's not, but it's the same. You end up kind of with the same result, and you're bringing some of these older people back into the more engaged.
Yeah, there's different strategies.
Another thing I like about the strategy that you're talking about too, Craig, is like, especially now, I think that the anti-spam algorithms, the anti-commercial broadcast algorithms are looking at like how many times are we seeing this message today? So if you're sending to 100,000 people the same message, they've got their eyes on that. But if you've basically done it as an autoresponder, now it's getting spread out over the course of time, that same message, and you're getting a mix of messages in. So it's signaling to them, I guess, in a different way it's signaling to them that this is these people are on a list, and they're on an autoresponder versus this guy's just blasting them. It pretty much shows that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have tracked autoresponder engagement, and I've looked at like certain emails in the sequence will perform, but I have seen it where the performance is very consistent, right? And so you can tell like whether this message is still performing. But in terms of the the engagement, my whole thing is, it's not that you never mail someone who's been on your list and hasn't been engaged for, let's say, 60 or 90 days, but you talk to them differently, right? You don't just broadcast them in the same way with the same frequency. you might be more leaning towards a more of a re-engagement type of a email. So it's not like you just stop mailing them and say, okay, never mind you. Because the other thing is, in terms of the black and white that you were talking about, Tellman, I agree that it's not quite black and white. Like, let's say we're talking about the diet niche, for example.
It's not actually black and white, but just for simplicity of thinking, right?
Like, yeah. But so the thing is that when you have someone, let's say they're interested in diet, like, they want to lose weight for a special event, and then they kind of fall off the wagon, but then they get back into it. So and then the other thing though, is the relationship, right? So I agree on the idea that your freshness are your best, except for the part where if you've built a relationship and a lot of trust with them, you've got a bit of a seasoning effect there where the reliability, the know, like, and trust go up. And so but it depends on, like, do you show up? Are you interesting? Are you earning their attention? Or over time, have they learned that they kind of don't need to pay attention to you anymore, because when they open their emails, it's kind of the same old. Right. The funny thing is, in terms of those, now when you have a large send, like back in the day, that you get the same email from like 14 different people. They're like, I just got off the phone with Ryan Dice, and I twisted his arm, and blah blah blah, right? And so I've made fun of that.
The old swipe email.
Yeah, in fact, there's a bonus interview with me and Mike Filsame where I just went on a rant about that, because I'm like, look, you're essentially lying to your list. It's a low-key lie. Like, I just got off the phone with so-and-so, unless you actually did.
Yeah, right. So, then you're full of shit. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so even if it's sort of benign and you're like, oh, this is just marketers marketing, it still breaks the relationship. Whereas I remember Joshua and some of the others that were just impeccable with how they talk to their list. Right. You just have it's like any human relationship. If you maintain it that way, you're going to have a different outcome, most likely, assuming the other side of the equation, right? Like, assuming they're still interested.
This is also the challenge that I guess slowly will probably become less of a challenge, but that, like, challenge with AI written email is the lack of
authenticity.
Authenticity, because the AI doesn't have your history. It doesn't have your experiences. It doesn't really know where you were born. It doesn't really know who your family is. It doesn't really know what it was like for you growing up.
This is what we can talk to, like, Jason Parker about tomorrow, which is, like, creating an agent that instead of just a prompt or a series of prompts, he's creating agents to use AI. And you're nodding your head, Craig, so I can see you're familiar with this concept, and probably Jason. Mm-hmm. I mean, because he's just blown up. But you basically you want to train it to know you. Right. And it's already pretty impressive without doing that. If I go, I'm shocked at like, it knows Tellman and it knows Craig, and it doesn't know you, but it knows about you. Yeah. And it knows you, and you could probably feed it for 5 minutes the right, enough emails, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess it's just because a couple of people have talked about this, but is this not something that's possible right now with Google? Is it Google Bard? Can't you tell it to go into my emails and write in my voice, or am I?
The issue. I'm not saying that AI can't write awesome emails. What I'm saying is that most people are going to use AI as a shortcut to write crappy emails.
It's the same as what Craig's saying. They're going to use AI to swipe. I mean,
and so I'm warning everybody against that. It's like, if you want to take the time to really use AI as a tool for extraordinary self-expression, I am down. Right, 100%. Like it's a supersonic paintbrush. Like it's it's an amazing tool. You can make anything you can imagine.
Bob Ross on steroids.
But the warning is, if you're going to build an email list and you're going to send email, don't just make some noise. Actually create a connection between you and your readers. Don't shortcut it just to avoid the responsibility of relational connection. Is what.
This brings up that same concept from yesterday that Craig mentioned. Who was it that talked about bionic marketing? Be a bionic marketer.
That was Sam Woods.
Like, it's not just putting words together. If you think about what that's saying is, it's like augment you with with the technology, and we're there. We're I mean, you know, we can't put it in our brain yet. Wait for Elon. I can't wait till Elon can put something in my brain. But anyway, that's going to be great.
huge trust issues come up for me there. But the, on the chip thing, but so a couple things. One is I'm in a mastermind with Jason Parker, and I don't want to steal his thunder. I can forecast that he absolutely has amazing things to tell you on that subject. And yesterday when I referenced that I am building custom AI sort of writing tools for clients and so forth, that's kind of what that's about. Like I will build something that will know what you want it to know and have that expertise. And there's a lot that you can do with that. But to Tellman's point, the beautiful moment there was, as in 2005 and 2025, if you lean towards the shortcuts, you're screwed. Because it's just like whether it was, you know, the first caveman to have a club and fire, you know, when everybody has club and fire, you don't have an advantage anymore in the arms race, right? The one constant over the last 20 years, and this is where we talked a bit about this yesterday, that authenticity is your superpower. And I'm not saying you can't use the AI to leverage and do all kinds of things, especially if you're working with clients or whatever. But if you want to, we're talking now about engagement with your list and having them give a damn about when you send them an email, putting some thought into having a bit of soul in there, right? Like Tellman was giving very specific things about whether it's a childhood story or an anecdote or something like that. Can you fake it? There's a lot you can do, right? So that's probably a discussion for tomorrow with you and Jason, right? But what I do want to say is, if you can, the way I use AI is more of that bionic thing. Like I want to use it on the research and idea brainstorming, but I'll layer in the stories or the me part, right? Give me some bullet points of what I might want to talk about with this subject, or, hey, you know, chat, tell me, like, that's great. That sort of seems like an obvious answer. What's a counterintuitive, you know, approach to that topic or something like that? Like have that next level conversation with it, but I don't use the raw output from AI. And I think when you're talking about essentially writing emails, we're talking in the context of to your own list, and you know, whether it's a broadcast or creating a sequence, there's something magical about adding in. I would really associate this with Joshua and you and like some of the old school you know, email marketers that really, that's where I got my sense of like, what is email done the right way according to my sensibilities? What am I trying to accomplish here?
Right.
And that's some of what we were talking about yesterday with the things that aren't all that scalable, right? Like I want to have that personal touch on the email because it's still a human relationship. Even if it's 100,000 people, it's 100,000 N of ones, right? And if you ever forget that, they will forget you
in a hurry. And
so I always think of it like everyone understands relationship analogies, right? Let's say you're in your significant other. If you don't talk to them for a week or a month or God forbid a few years, and then you come back in as if nothing's changed, right? Things have changed on that other person's perspective because you haven't been there, you haven't connected. And so in a less extreme thing, if your emails don't connect, even if you are sending them every day, but if they're forgettable, like how many times would you tune into a show if the latest episode sucked, right?
So I'm having a really cool revelation right now, which is, so we're doing a interview right now, and we are in the middle of a interview series, a show called the Tellman Fellman Show that Harris and I created 3 weeks ago. And I'm thinking back to when I started List Crusade, and I followed NPod and launched List Crusade.
Yeah.
And List Crusade was an interview series before I learned how to do teleseminars and before I learned how to sell from a 60 to 90 minute long form call. I did these 30-minute interviews on the phone using instant audio. Thank you, Armin Morin and Rick Raditz.
Yeah.
And we called into their line and we recorded it from our phones, and it was very crackly. And
yeah,
I interviewed Jay Abraham, and I interviewed T. Harvecker, and I interviewed Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen and all the marketing crew, like all the big names in marketing at the time, both in the personal development and the self-help. But in the interview series, I interviewed over 80 people for List Crusade. Again, it was on the phone, but the recording was displayed on a web page with an audio player button. Okay, and we got it transcribed by hand, which was expensive as the bejeez. I'll tell you.
That didn't end that long ago, Tellman. I mean, it wasn't expensive, but like, I mean,
I know. You know, like it costs something.
AI transcriptions only gotten good in the last 3 or 4 years.
I know,
really,
I know. And so, but what happened was I wrote an email every time we did a new interview. Okay. The interviews, though they were recorded live, there was not a live audience for most of the interviews. It was me, the audio person, and, and the person I was interviewing. Right. But the way that we gave the interviews to my list was in an autoresponder sequence. Right. And occasionally I'd get behind, and then I'd send out a broadcast, and then I'd add the email to the autoresponder sequence. If I'd get behind the autoresponder because we were doing all these interviews. Because once we got on a path, we were just doing tons of interviews. The point is that we built this long ass autoresponder sequence, sending out 2 to 3 interviews a week, right? And I did over 80 interviews, and so it was super long, and that was my end pod, right? Because each one of those interviews had a pitch for a low-cost product at the end through an affiliate link, right? Like a $27, $37, $47 ebook or whatever, for the most part, through an affiliate link at the end. And so I developed all these streams of income, but they all came from the interview series. And so, like, when we talk about having new and fresh content sending out in the emails, right, whether they're broadcasts or whether it's your sequence, one of the amazing parts about constantly creating fresh content is that if you do an interview series, it's right there for you, because ideally you're interviewing people whose names and whose subject matter is relevant to your readers. And when you're like, oh, I'm interviewing Tony Robbins today, they're all like, holy crap, let's go check it out, because there's star power, right? And that makes it new and fresh. So it's almost like the interview series in an autoresponder sequence, almost like it's like the perfect format for creating an awesome long-term relationship with a list. Well,
it could be also, so first of all, I want to go back to something even older than the anecdotes we're talking about, back to the late 90s. There was back then, remember TV, like NBC Thursday nights was like the thing. It was Seinfeld and Friends and all that, right? Those were and I just happened to remember this ad campaign that in the off season, when there were no new episodes coming out, NBC would say, hey, watch the episodes coming up on Thursday. If you haven't seen it before, it's new to you. Right. And it was a brilliant campaign of like, hey, what do you care if it's not the latest episode? If you haven't seen it, it's new to you. Right. Yeah. And so to your point, like, so whether it's Tony Robbins or whoever, the main thing I wanted that came up for me when you said that is reward them for the click, right? Reward them for the attention. So it could be a part of an autoresponder, Harris, if this is an automated thing, or it could be, hot off the press. That some strategy needs to be put into that, depending on what you're trying to do. Like, and then it's like, so I've written a lot in the financial market, right? So if you're talking about something that happened today in the market, in a few months, if your whole point is about today in the market and that thing, then it's going to seem very dated, right? Even a week from now, from the financial, because in their perspective, if you can't bet on it and make money with it, its perceived value goes way down.
If it's timely, it still needs to be a broadcast.
Yes. However, if you want to do an interview, let's say it's more principle based, or it's more story based, or it's more epiphany based, or, biographical, or any of those kind of things, recipe based, right? Those kind of things.
Content. Yeah.
Yes, but with a little bit of planning, you can make an interview like that much more relevant than if it's, so like, hey, Tony, tell me about the time when you first understood that anchors could create lasting change in a human being or whatever.
Dude, that's the thing is that, that's one of the interesting differences between the marketing niche and working in the personal development hypnosis world is that all of my hypnosis funnels are long-lasting converters. They're not trend-based. They are solving problems that are part of the human condition. And they don't, I mean, the funnels need updating and all this kind of stuff, but like the product itself is still just as relevant as when it was created, 10, 15 years ago. Whereas most marketing products and programs and courses, they date out after 3 or 4 years.
Yes, but there's an interesting what's old is new again aspect that can happen too.
But at that point, you have to remake it, right? I mean, that's what we're doing, by the way, with our webinar summit system. I mean, back in the day, I created the perpetual marketing machine and sold thousands of copies of that at $4,000 and taught people how to do a teleseminar series based summit, right? Virtual summit on the phone and make a crap load of money and build a giant list. Same model with webinars used far and wide, and probably more summits are happening this year than ever in history, I would expect. So
they've had a resurgence in recent times. But to your point, if your value that you're offering is like, hey, I'm on the cutting edge of everything all the time, just understand what you're signing up for is that you're always
until you're not. Give it 10 years and then see what happens.
So this brings me back to something that I wanted that you made me think about before. So we were talking about you being in a mastermind, a cutting edge mastermind. Let's Jason Parker's mastermind is very cutting edge, using AI the right way to create copy. What advantage do you think, or I guess let's be fair, what advantage and disadvantage do you think that you have over or against other people that are in the group, that are in the mastermind, you coming from a place of experience and them just having kind of popped on the scene in the last year or two? Do you see any palpable difference in the way you and they approach things, and advantage and disadvantage? It might not even be an advantage and disadvantage, it might be different.
It might be a different mastermind too.
Yeah, that particular mastermind happens to have it's solid with OG marketers. And so what's beautiful about that is I will answer your question, because I'm in a number of things, and that has been one of my superpowers or one of my cheat codes or whatever you call it. I just stay connected to great minds, and whether they're new or more seasoned, it's just so much more valuable to me than trying to just do everything solo and try to be the smartest guy in the room, all that kind of stuff. In that particular mastermind, there are some people who've been at it longer than I have. And I don't want to steal his thunder, but that's amazing what can happen in that kind of a room when you're sharing ideas and you have all those deeply marinated experience-based insights brought to a new problem, right? Because that's interesting. When I am mentoring people, or when I am in a different kind of room where it's more of a new audience, more to your scenario, Harris. What's interesting is there's a balance there, right? So sometimes me, as being someone who's been around since 1902, as it were, my first info product was on a stone tablet, right? So that's amazing. So there are new ideas that I'll get from the young guns where they will see something fresh that I might not have considered, or it's just adapted to this current market, right? Like I would say I would lean to them on something like an app or something that's brand new, because that's not really my ready set. That's not where I'm focused on. However, if it's like sales psychology or deeper principles, or, hey, do you think this will work? Sometimes what'll happen is, hey guys, I've got 3 decades of trial and error and other, a database to tap into. And I can tell you that this violates a major principle or whatever, and it's not likely to work, even though it's new, right? Because there's this duality of like, there's nothing new under the sun, and yet every day is a new thing. So there's this, you got to kind of look at it from both perspectives at the same time. You're not going to likely to come up with something that's literally has no connection to anything ever in the past or anybody else. And to you can waste a lot of your time in life, thinking, because I did that. I would go through a phase where if I learned something from, let's say, Armin Morin or John Carlton or Frank Kern or something, I suddenly felt like, oh, well, that's awesome. I'll use it, but I can't teach it. That's their thing. Right. But then I learned something. I mentioned Frank Kern. So where this kind of hit me in the face is I was actively doing that back then. I was actively taking ideas that I learned from other people and then choosing not to put it in products because someone else was teaching it.
Right.
And
well,
generally,
it is weird though, like, because if you can get too close and step on somebody's toes and completely swipe their stuff and be a total, totally not do that well too. You can screw that up big time, right?
For sure. And so there's that other duality too. There's a yin yang to everything. There's a right and a wrong way to do things. But what I learned from that, and I believe this is the right way, back when Mass Control came out.
Oh, that was so good. I mean, like the list of what pros launched was done by following Mass Control, man.
Yes. Well, so the epiphany, though, is that Frank right up front said, because I had the courses he was referring to. Dan Kennedy had a course on personality-based selling or something like that. And then John Carlton had his other his copy principles. And Frank straight up said, hey, I learned from these guys. I added my twist. Here's my thing. Right. And he just straight up said it. Right. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh, okay. Because now I get it. So you can teach something as long as you provide attribution and you're not literally trying to compete with them in real time and steal their thunder. Like, that's not what I'm like. You're not riding.
I also want to point out that does not excuse stealing someone's curriculum.
Right.
Certainly that never excuses bootlegging and selling somebody's course.
No. Right.
But the other thing that I see out there is where people will just lift somebody's sales letter, right, and put their own name on it, and then kind of reteach the course.
I had that happen to me in like 1997 or something, where someone was like, "Hey, someone just literally copied your anyway." So that was weird, but no. So I think part of that equation of the anecdote I just shared is Frank did absolutely add his own thing, but he was sharing the twin inspirations that he had sort of built on top of. Very different from bootlegging or just straight up stealing, where these people add no value. They had no original thought. They're literally just chameleons and copycats. I have no use for that. But if the idea that you'll wait around to launch something until you have a genesis of something completely new no one's ever talked about, you'll die, lonely and broke, because that's
though that does happen. You just can't control when it happens.
Right. That's true too. So you just don't want to wait.
You have like revelations, but you don't get to choose when that's going to strike.
Yeah. So use inspiration. Be a part of. But so that's a judgment thing. That's probably beyond what we're talking about here. But it's really just the main thing I wanted to circle back to is how to use AI and how to build an audience and how do you stay connected and engaged with them with email. I love the autoresponder, but I think if it's going to be an autoresponder sequence, you do need to put that extra thought into making it evergreen, right? So if you want it to be relevant in 6 months or a year, within reason, and look at your stats, look at the engagement. And if it starts to dip on one, then that's the one you're going to refresh. So it's not, like you said earlier, Harris, nothing is truly set and forget. And I see one of the things that I see that happens.
Totally passive.
Yeah, the dark side. Well, is the expectation that it would be like that. I think people put so much effort into building passive income that they work harder than they would if they just freaking did something.
That's right.
It's like, but the part of the automation, I posted about this a while ago on Facebook, that I've seen a lot of effort get built into automation from the ground up before you know if the offer even converts. I'm like, you automate something that worked, it's like, hey, I did this mechanism and created this great result. I want to automate the mechanism. You don't just go, hey, let's dream up a mechanism and put all this effort into building it and then go, does it work? That's a terrible idea.
Right.
And I've had clients and even myself, put a lot of effort into things and realize, oh, this was dumb. That didn't work. So make sure that you have value and that it gets engagement and people care first. And then you can ask yourself, does this have an evergreen quality? Is this something that will be valuable in hypnosis, diet? There are a lot of things where the principles don't change, right? And so some thought can be put into that. But if you're riding that wave of, hey, I'm on the cutting edge, I'm showing you what the latest and greatest thing is, just know that that's your business. You're surfing the current wave, and you're not going to have a lot of passive, opportunities there if that's literally the quest you're on. So just kind of know your audience, know what they're interested in, and respond accordingly.
Yep.
So I hate to do this, guys, but we're getting close to the top of the hour. You guys probably haven't been paying attention to that, but were there any other questions? Was there a really strong question that you really wanted to ask, Tellman, or do you think you got them all out? You said you had a few that you specifically wanted.
I think this was great. I think this was awesome. I mean,
I wanted to ask you one thing. I'm throwing myself into the fire on this one a little bit. So I had a product called Site Stealer, which taught people to steal somebody else's website. Basically, it was to go look at not even a competitor's website, but somebody in a different niche, and then kind of getting ideas from its typical swipe, and kind of using it as a template.
You were teaching funnel hacking before it was called Russell.
I guess I was teaching funnel hacking.
Yeah, you had a SPC version of it. Site stealing is very brutally honest. I'm stealing your site.
Yeah. Well, but I was surprised because some people thought I was actually gonna, based on the name of it, right? Oh, you must be teaching people to actually
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But even within that confine, though, taking somebody's kind of template and layout, that's all. I mean, I guess if they didn't sell you the template, then that is kind of a form of stealing the formula.
It's a form of plagiarism. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I think Russell does actually have to talk about this, and when he talks about funnel hacking, because even calling it not stealing, people still think that what he means is stealing, because the word hack does have multiple meanings.
It's a gray area, guys.
Yeah.
This is the reason we're talking about, because it is totally not clear. It's not absolute, because there are absolutely aspects of funnel. Like, Russell's awesome. I use ClickFunnels every day, and I really appreciate the empire that he's built and the courses that he's created, all these things. And funnel hacking, even just because you're ripping somebody off in a different niche doesn't mean you're not ripping somebody off. That is a form of you can be inspired by somebody's shit, or you can copy it, and it's not clear where the line changes.
Well, and this with copywriting, swiping, art, in this whole creative area, this has been a perennial question, right? Are you
a perennial question?
Yeah, perennial. Yeah. So it's terrible, but I love it. But are you taking inspiration, or are you just taking, right? That's going to be an ethical question. That's, again, you're going to have to figure out what kind of person you want to be. So your motivation, Harris, is not to literally steal. That was more like a catchy marketing term.
Right.
Steal this book and stuff like that. Steal has multiple meanings too, and not all of them bad, right?
It was inspired by an Agora headline, "Rob Banks legally." So I was like, "Ooh, steal sites legally," and then what would that look like? That's kind of what.
Well, there's the light and the dark side of marketing, right? There's the dark side where you're literally just stealing stuff and selling crap and looking to make a quick hit and make money and run away. That's, marketers are aware of that impulse. It's the dark side you want to avoid. But then, if the idea that you're going to only create things and test them from scratch is kind of dumb, because if the caveman saw how Ugg over there built a fire, he's going to mimic that because it worked. That's also just part of who we are and how civilization
it's part of evolution.
So I think the watchword is: are you adding anything new? Are you contributing at all, or are you just copying? If you're a carbon copy of the other thing, you're not going to succeed. Newsflash, your marketplace is probably aware of multiple choices, and they're going to go with whoever they found first. And eventually it'll just backfire on you. You're just not going to, that's not a long-term strategy.
You could get a short-term.
Hold the phone here. I'm not a fan of copycats. Okay. That's not, I'm not down. However, I don't know that you're right. Like, think about the number of knockoff companies that there are that last for years, if not decades, that make like low cost, cheap, like cheaper, less quality, more widely distributed, like Acme white label, like.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday who won't put his new stuff on an affiliate network, because not any affiliate network, because he had put it on an affiliate network and somebody stole it and made millions, made way more than he did with it.
Right.
You know, for whatever reason, maybe the other person had more resources. And I do see it happening where people are, you know, at least short-term successful.
And there's also the thing of like, you know, Betamax versus VHS. You know, Betamax was, I don't know if it was first, but it was better, but VHS won. Like, so there is a thing where the pioneer isn't the one that makes it big. And but the main thing is, it's just add value and use inspiration. Look at a funnel and say, okay, they offered this low end, this low ticket thing. Then they did a mid ticket, and then they did another mid ticket. Oh, why'd they do that? Or actually, what I've seen is like low ticket, and then, you know, low ticket. By the time you're done, you spent $250, but each one was, you know, $47. And like, son of a bitch! If you had asked me for $250 right up front, I would have said no. But you just got $250 out of me happily because I liked all of your sequence of sales. You can hack that, but then, you know, and maybe you look at some of the like how to get what you want without, you know, the bad thing you don't want. You can hack that as like in the overall appeal of the headline without literally stealing anything. You're just looking at the framework, as Russell would say. You're looking at the structure. You're not stealing the guts of it, right?
You know what? An interesting way of thinking about this, though, is like, think about cover bands.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, yeah. So there's like the Fine Young Cannibals did like that Elvis song, you know. Like, I actually like the Fine Young Cannibals version better.
Yeah. So, like, if you're a talented musician or you want to become a better musician, playing other people's songs is a great way to practice before you know how to write your own. But like, don't pretend it's your own song. Number one, and number two, like, always give attribution, and then like, there's the general rule. If you're trying to, like, if you're inspired by someone's stuff and you want to like integrate it into your own stuff, is be inspired, don't copy, and if you're gonna do that, like, make it at least 20% better.
Yeah, show your work
and focus on putting your own unique spin on it and making it yours, so that it's like actually worth putting out there in the first place, you know?
Yeah, but you're also not saying, hey, copy my sales page and then give attribution. This sales page was originally written by Tellman Fellman, and I think I can make a better product with it, so that's my 20% better. You're saying,
that's copyright infringement and plagiarism. You know, like, you'll get sued for that, right? Yeah. That's like copying somebody's book without permission. Like, you can't do that, right? It's not allowed.
So let's wrap it up, everybody. I hate to do it, but I have a hard exit pretty soon.
Yeah, you getting to a big haggis to go?
I don't think I could eat haggis. I think I've taken one bite of it, and it's not.
I think you should live stream a hell haggis meal. Like,
no, I've got to perform in a few hours. I don't want to be sick.
Haggis buffet. Go to the
Harris
haggis.
Harris eats haggis. Haggis wins.
Do it. I had some very gourmet haggis several years ago. It tasted kind of like spicy meatloaf.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but like, I haven't really had like proper Scottish haggis.
Yeah, I suppose if you can squeeze the blood out of it, it might taste okay. But
do it, Harris.
Yeah,
no, thanks. Anyway,
your most popular video ever.
So we've been talking a lot about, on and off. We've talked a little bit about the interview series concept, and we talked about email marketing, and we've talked about AI copywriting. And Tellman and I have a course. We have a boot camp coming up on doing just that, virtual summit, basically a virtual summit series where you get 8 to 12 experts together. We show you how to do that, and you get them to market your summit and build a list of people that want to be on your list and want to open your emails and want to go to all of the webinars that you're putting on every week. So if you're interested in getting into our boot camp, Tellman's better at thinking of words than me. What word do we want them to put down?
The best word is boot camp. If you want to find out more information about the upcoming
not very original. Summit. We said that one already. I thought we were changing it up. That's all right. That's all right. I throw it to you. Boot camp. I could have said boot camp. I could have said
it. Well, you didn't say it. I said it. Boot camp. Fine. So what you want to do is, if you want more information about our upcoming 90-day, 12-week boot camp to get your virtual summit launched, to build a big, awesome, responsive list real fast, type boot camp in the comments. And this is a 2-step process. Send me or Harris or even Craig a DM. Whatever platform you're on, send us a message, let us know, and we'll send you a link to where you can find out more information. And if it makes sense, we'll get on the phone, we'll talk about it, walk through all the details, and see if it would actually help you to reach your business goals or not. So if so, that'd be great. We're starting in September, so move fast. Type bootcamp in the comments below, send us a message, we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here for a second day in a row, Craig. We'll have you back on tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. We have Jason Parker on tomorrow, which we'll be sure to tell him you said hello and thank you. But yeah, thanks again. This has been a really good in-depth, content-driven interview, and I hope people that listen to it get a lot out of it.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah. Find me on Facebook and.
I was going to say, Craig, where can people find you?
Yeah, just Facebook. Craig Perrine on Facebook. That's the best place to find me right now.
Boom. Rock and
move the God of Marketing question so we see how to spell Craig Perrine. There we go.
Don't be negative. It probably won't work anyway. If you like that shirt, send Craig a message and he will sell you one.
No, he'll sell you that one. It's like an OnlyFans. He's sweating it for 3 days. You gotta bid on it, baby.
Yeah, it's called Only Craig's. Since Craigslist was taken.
Only Craig. Just Only Craig.
Imposter did that one, but yeah.
All right. Well, let me know how that works out for you, dude. I won't be tuning in.
Only Craig's shirts. It's about.
All right, everybody. Rock and roll. Thanks for a great episode. Much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you. See you guys next time.
Bye. Thanks.